All right, today we're digging into a source that makes an absolutely staggering claim that a U.S. president was methodically pushed, even manipulated, into starting a war with Iran. Let's break it down. So get this. The quote is, "I got him before he got me." And that's reportedly what former President Donald Trump said right after he authorized the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Why? Well, because he was apparently convinced that the leader was about to assassinate him first.
Right, so that leads to the huge question, doesn't it? How did he get to that point? What made him so sure? Well, the source we're unpacking today makes a pretty wild claim. It alleges this wasn't some simple political calculation. No, it was supposedly the end result of a long, very sophisticated influence campaign, one specifically designed to prey on his personal fears.
Okay, let's get into it. According to this source, the whole campaign actually kicked off way back during Trump's first run for president. And it wasn't just one thing. It supposedly operated on two separate but parallel tracks. So here's how the source breaks down those two tracks. On one side, you have what they call the money. We're talking immense financial and political pressure. And on the other side, the mind. This was supposedly a highly sophisticated psychological operation, custom-built to target Trump's very specific personality.
So, looking at the money side of things, the source names some pretty heavy hitters in the world of political donations. You've got Sheldon Adelson, Paul Singer, and it alleges that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, was the one who acted as the fixer, basically bridging the gap and connecting Trump with this very powerful, very wealthy group.
Okay, but what about that other side of the coin, the psychological operation? Well, according to the source, the goal here was pretty calculated. First, they wanted to decode Trump's personality, really figure out what makes him tick. And then, once they had that, the plan was to exploit his biggest triggers, his very transactional way of thinking, and crucially, his deep, deep fear of ever looking weak.
And this is where, according to the source, that psychological campaign allegedly took a really dark turn. A central piece of the strategy was, apparently, to trap Trump inside a manufactured cycle of fear.
The source has a name for this. They call it an escalation trap. And the idea is actually pretty simple. You make a move that forces your target into a corner. They either have to escalate things even further, or they risk being perceived as weak. The source argues that the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani back in 2020, that was step one. That was the move designed to spring this trap and get Trump personally worried about retaliation.
So check out this timeline of how that fear was supposedly built up. It starts in January 2020. The Soleimani assassination sets the trap. After that, Trump reportedly develops this very personal fear of being assassinated in revenge. Then you fast forward to 2024. The source claims the FBI manufactures a totally fake plot involving someone named Asaf Merchant, and all the while he's apparently being fed a steady stream of other imaginary threats, even a supposed plot to shoot down his plane.
Yeah, that case of Asaf Merchant. The source really zooms in on that one. It's presented as a kind of textbook example of how these plots were supposedly built from scratch, completely manufactured.
So let's walk through the anatomy of this alleged plot. Step 1. Merchant, who has known ties to Iran and is already on a watch list, is somehow waved right into the United States by authorities. Step 2. An FBI informant pretending to be a businessman befriends him. Step 3 is where it gets really wild. This informant supposedly invents an assassination plot out of thin air and then pressures Merchant, who is apparently reluctant to go along with it, and then the timing of the final step is just incredible. Merchant gets arrested just 24 hours before a real assassination attempt on Trump, creating this massive, headline-grabbing but allegedly false connection. And according to the source, this wasn't just a one-off thing. The Asaf Merchant case was supposedly part of a larger pattern. It claims similar manufactured plots were used to convince other big names, think former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, that they were also in Iran's crosshairs. And, all of this just helps to reinforce that narrative of a constant looming threat.
So you've got these supposedly manufactured threats floating around. The big question is, how do you connect them to real-world events to get that final push, the final justification for going to war?
And this is where the whole story allegedly pivots. The source claims that when two real assassination attempts were made against Trump in 2024, Israeli intelligence deliberately and falsely pinned them on Iran. And just like that, you have the ultimate justification for war. The source points to this exact moment on Fox News as being absolutely pivotal. It's the first time anyone in his position, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, goes on television and publicly connects the assassination attempts on Trump directly to Iran.
But the specific words he used are what's really key here.
Because when the host pressed him on where he got this information, Netanyahu was very careful. He said the intelligence came through proxies. And the source we're looking at today interprets that phrasing as a kind of veiled admission, an admission of the very manipulation campaign it's been describing all along. So you add it all up, the financial pressure, the psychological games, the alleged plots, and it leads to war. But this is a conflict that, according to the source, is now unraveling in ways nobody really expected.
For one thing, the war is reportedly not going well for the U.S. and Israel. The source points to the staggering human cost, citing a figure of over 17,000 residential buildings in Iran that have been damaged or just completely destroyed.
And this brings us to what the source alleges is the final stage of this whole manipulation. As the war starts to stall and images of Iranian military successes start to surface, what is Trump reportedly told? He's told it's all fake. It's just AI-generated propaganda. And it's a claim he has repeated himself. He's effectively been convinced that the reality of the war isn't real. And so the source leaves us with one last, really provocative question to think about. When a leader's own personal psychology and the massive forces of global geopolitics crash into each other this dramatically, who is really calling the shots? Who's making that final decision?